Parts 1 and 2 looked at how and why money appeared after we started farming around 10,000 years ago. Societies got bigger, so swapping things got more complicated. Using metal coins as tokens for swapping got around this problem. But then we started using paper money. It was easier to carry, but unlike metal coins, it had no value in itself. It was just a promise. In a way, money had become a figment of our imagination. But as you'll see in this video, things were about to get a whole lot more imaginary. So remember the gold standard? In 1816, banknotes had been tied to the value of gold to try and make them less imaginary. But soon, people started using these banknotes to buy and sell imaginary things. They'd buy the riches brought back from India by a ship, even though the ship hadn't left England yet, and might never even make it. Or they'd buy Joe Bloggs' business and the riches it made, even though he hadn't built it yet. Or they'd buy the crops harvested from a field, even if the seeds hadn't been planted yet. Buying and selling things that don't exist yet involves a lot of clever guessing, which in the economy is called speculation. Speculation means people can make money from money without having to actually make anything in the middle. And it can cause some big problems. If bankers make money out of things that don't exist, lots of wealth is built around thin air. This is called a bubble, and bubbles can burst. This is what happened in the 1930s in the US and Europe. When speculation bubbles burst, you get an economic crash, where lots of money in banks all of a sudden becomes worthless. Overnight, people's fortunes and life savings disappeared. We'd also just been through World War I, which cost England a lot of money, and things were difficult. People got scared into hoarding all their gold and wealth instead of using banks. So the gold standard was no use anymore, and it was lifted in 1931. Money was no longer tied to lumps of gold. It became purely imagination and trust, and it stayed that way ever since. This gives some people the collywobbles, especially since the 1990s, when more and more money has become digital, so you can't even hold it anymore. You need a whole lot of trust in your bank for that. Meanwhile, there have been some more big economic crashes that have shown that our banks aren't all that trustworthy. A big bubble burst in 2008 after banks lent lots of imaginary money to people so they could buy nice houses. Lots of money disappeared and everything crumbled, but there'll be a whole separate video for that. This is part of the reason that cryptocurrencies started to emerge about 10 years ago, like Bitcoin. These don't rely on trusting banks or government. They're controlled by technology instead. Buying and selling happens in something called a blockchain, where cryptography makes sure no money can be spent twice or copied. But a cryptocurrency is still imaginary money, and you certainly can't hold it. In fact, 80% of the money in the UK economy today is just floating around in thin air, in our computer systems and in our heads. So next time you use money, just stop and think about what it actually is. Think about how we got to the point where we trust that a piece of paper is worth something, or that a number on a screen is worth something. And take some time to think about what the future of money might have in store.